excited to get through this week, another very productive week here in the House. Obviously, excited to get some additional legislation on its way to the governor's desk. One of the things that we started talking about at the beginning of session was labor reform. Representative Vescovo has worked very hard over the past 2 years on project labor agreements. So I'm going to start with letting him talk a little bit about that effort and the success.
So today we helped bring Senate Bill 182 across the line. I'm glad to see it pass. Some would say it's an anti-union legislation, and I would disagree. I would say it's pro-worker, and it allows the other 86% of the workforce to bid on projects and perform work on projects without being signatory, and that's very important to me. I'll take any questions if anybody has them.
Have you talked to the governor about this? Is he supportive?
I have talked to the governor about it, and he is supportive of this.
Do you have any figures on how many of these projects are ongoing currently?
I do not at the moment, no.
What about the Senate? Any worry over there that it could get blocked, or what's going to
Well, actually, we just truly agreed and finally passed it here in the House today.
Maybe talk about working with Senator Onder on that. I know that he has been the big champion of it over in the Senate, and he had some big issues on it. And it seemed like both of you had some personal convictions behind passing that piece of legislation. Can you
Sure.
get into that a little bit?
So Senator Onder does have some personal experiences, and I can speak briefly to those. I know that they've had some project labor agreements come up in O'Fallon that he and I have actually helped to try and do away with, and we've been unsuccessful at certain times. But I've been pushing this legislation since I came into the House 3 years ago, before even Senator Onder was filing this legislation. I think we do truly see it as representation for all taxpayers, and that's why we have pushed it thoroughly.
Speaker Richardson, what are your thoughts on project labor agreements, and I guess in the context of the larger labor reform
Look,
fight?
I think this is a simple issue from the way that most of the public's going to understand it. Everybody ought to have the opportunity to compete and bid for those public works projects. And so I think to the extent that we're opening up those projects to union shops and non-union shops and let everyone have the opportunity to bid on it, it's the right policy for the state of Missouri. Obviously, the other big news this week, if you guys are done on project labor agreements, is working to get the budget into conference. Chairman Fitzpatrick and the Budget Committee have worked hard, and we'll have a lot of work to do between now and next Friday. But we're excited to get the bills into conference today, and remain very optimistic that we're going to have a balanced budget on the governor's desk by next Friday. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you guys know, the Senate did get the budget to us this week. A lot of, spent last week wondering if that was going to happen, and really glad that it did. That gives us a week to get the budget to the governor's desk. We'll start working over the weekend, really with staff, to try to make sure that we have a full understanding of what all the differences are, because it's not extremely straightforward. There's a lot of, fund swaps and things that are pretty technical in the budget, differences between the House and the Senate, and so we're working to still iron all that out. This is definitely the latest that we've been in the process. At this point, with a week to go since I've been here, so it's just a matter of getting all the information to where we can start looking at the differences and negotiating with the other side of the building on the final product, and I think we'll get that done.
Any points of disagreement that you foresee right now, as of now?
Well, some of the things that happen on the Senate floor, obviously, the House, recommended full funding of the formula, and we were the first ones to do that. The Senate initially disagreed with that approach, and wanted to focus on other things in the budget, and so they cut the formula increase that we had provided in our budget, and used that money to do the other things they wanted to do in the budget. The Senate decided on the floor that they did want to fully fund the formula, but they didn't really dive into where they were going to cut to do that. So I will say it probably makes while I'm really excited about it, and I'm glad that that's not a conferenceable difference, it does make the negotiations in conference a little more difficult, because now the budget's $45 million bigger than it already. Their budget was already bigger than ours coming out of committee, and now it's another basically $50 million bigger than ours on top of what it already was. And the biggest point, I think, probably point of disagreement is probably going to be less about what the money is spent on and more about how much money we're spending, because we want to pass a balanced budget. I mean, that's what the Constitution says we have to do. That's what I'm going to make sure we do.
And one more question for either of you. How has this budget process been different, knowing that the finish line was a Republican governor rather than a Democrat?
Look, I think I'll take it. I mean, we've been excited to work with the administration. We've said that. You guys ask me every week how things are working with the governor. So it's been good to work with the governor on the budget. And, you know, they had a big task through the transition to get a handle on the budget and get it presented to the legislature. They did that, and we'll continue to work with the administration as we get these bills truly agreed and on his desk.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Everybody knows we got a late start. And when you've got a new administration coming in and a bunch of new people that are new to state government, they had a lot of tough decisions to make. And you combine the newness of the situation for the governor and his staff with the really difficult budget year, and I can't say I blame them one bit for the timing of the release of their budget. And we knew it was going to be coming late. They informed us of that pretty early. They met their constitutional requirement to deliver it by the first week of February, and we put together a schedule that we thought would work within that, and I think it's going to.
The House and the Senate are not in sync on pension costs. How are you going to resolve that?
You know, it's just going to be another. I don't think I'm going to dive into specific lines and what we're going to do. I think that everything is about compromise in this process, and I know that that'll probably be a high priority for the Senate. And if we can balance the budget and do what they want to do there, and we may do that, but we'll see what happens there.
You said earlier that you were worried just about the amount of spending in the Senate version of this. Senator Brown said that he's taking debt just off the bottom line. Could you expand on your concerns about doing that?
Well, yeah, we have a budget is a projection of how much money we're gonna. I mean, it's authorization to spend money. Sometimes there are things that we don't expect that come up that we need to pay for in the middle of a fiscal year. That's why yesterday we truly agreed and finally passed the supplemental bill, House Bill 14, to pay for unexpected expenses for this fiscal year. We had agreed with the Senate and the governor to set $100 million aside for unplanned expenses because we always have them. If we don't do that, we're basically just asking the governor to withhold from the budget on the first dollar that we have come up that's unplanned. So we agreed on $100 million set aside for the supplemental, and in addition to that, any money, because the growth in Medicaid, there was a $300 million request for new spending in Medicaid. I said, my position is we shouldn't give you that right now. We're going to cut that. We're going to set that aside in addition to the $100 million. And if you really need that money, we're going to have a conversation about it in supplemental next year. If we're really having $300 million of growth in Medicaid in a year, we need to have a bigger conversation about that instead of just checking a box and saying we're going to do it. So our number was $100 million plus the cuts we made to Medicaid. And I think that the reason that that's important is because last year we had a $300 million supplemental GR. This is the only year that I've been here that it's been under $100 million. And if you look at the average over the last 5 years, it's been about $120 million. So I think it's important that we have that money set aside. And the other thing is that if revenue comes in even a percent, our CRE for 17 is 3%. If we come in at 2%, that's $90 million right there that we're off. We're starting with $90 million less in the bank than we thought we'd have. And that's a problem. We have to be able to account for those types of things.
Are you involved in any negotiations to do like a phase in of the circuit breaker or a phase out of the circuit breaker?
There was some discussion about that. I don't know. I have been approached by at least one senator about the possibility of that. I said, listen, if you guys want to come up with some alternative plan on the property tax credit, then I'll look at it. My position as of right now is that we came up with a way in our budget to get back to 21 points for the level of care requirement for nursing homes and in-home services, and that was to take the savings from eliminating the renter's portion of the property tax credit and putting it directly into those services. As far as I'm concerned, the Senate has the option, if we stick with the House position on that in the budget, the Senate has the option to take that bill up and pass it until 6 p.m. on May 12th, and they will have the opportunity to make the decision if we're going to be at 21 points or 27 points. and I will fully support whatever decision they decide to make on that.
You said you were concerned about the Senate even passing the budget this week.
Well, initially, I think everybody knows that the Senate was moving really slow last week. It's not like they've been passing a lot of bills out of there lately. I think the budget probably represents about half of the House bills they've passed, or probably about 2/3 of the House bills they've passed so far this year. So, yeah, I think there was some concern that if the Senate couldn't get kind of moving, get the legislative trains moving a little bit over there, that possibly the budget wasn't going to get over here in time for us to conference.
And your ranking member, Representative Butler, just a few moments ago on the floor, said that you two had made agreements on capital projects. He was worried. He seemed frustrated. He's worried some of those could get stripped out.
Well, what Representative Butler said was we agree that the projects in House Bill 19 are things we both want to do. But Representative Butler has known since day one that my number one priority is balancing the budget. And if that means that House Bill 19 doesn't pass, that's what it means.
Anything else?
Yeah, what's the game plan for the next 2 weeks here, and also why has workplace discrimination not come up yet?
Well, look, as you've seen, we've been moving at a deliberative pace with the Senate bills that are over here, and we'll continue to do that. We've got plenty of time left to work. Our plan next week, we have a number of things that we want to finish and get to the governor's desk. We have a number of Senate bills that we want to get over to the Senate with House priorities on them as well, and some House language on them. So we'll spend the first part of the week working on that, with obviously a lot of the week taken up by the effort to truly agree and finish the budget. So that'll be our plan.
Is there any specific bill that you consider a must-have in the last 2 weeks?
Look, I'm not going to set that mark out there and let somebody go try to make it not happen. But listen, I'm hopeful that we have already had an incredibly successful session. If you look at the things that we set out to do at the beginning of session, we've delivered on a number of those promises already. I'm confident that when we get to the 12th of May, we're going to have delivered on a bunch more, and that this is going to be one of the best sessions we've had in my time up here.
You think we'll get a gift ban out of the Senate?
I'm hopeful. That was the first bill that left the House, and so I'm still hopeful that we'll get something back.
I want to ask a few questions about PDMP.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's scheduled to go to conference. Has there been a time scheduled for that yet, and have you appointed representatives?
I have appointed conferees. You'd have to ask Representative Rader on the timing of that. I don't know if they've scheduled an official conference yet.
You said earlier that you've had a good experience working with the new Republican governor so far this year, but at least some of his actions have frustrated some senators, and that's led to at least some delays over on that side. Do you think his leadership style has caused any problems in trying to get Republican priorities across the finish line?
I'll let the governor answer that question, and let senators who've been frustrated answer that question. Our experience in working with the administration overall has been good. Does that mean that House members are in 100% lockstep with every decision the governor's made? No, I didn't say that. But overall, the ability to work with a like-minded administration has been good.
Mr. Speaker, I did see Governor Greitens in the House side gallery on Monday. I know he was back a second time. Is that in the 8 years you've been here, 7 years, have you seen a governor come up to the side gallery like that?
I never saw Governor Nixon on the side gallery.
Just one more. Real ID, that's still got 2 weeks to go, and Senator Kehoe said that that's one of his main priorities during the final 2 weeks. Is there anything in the House can do at this point?
We passed the bill. We stand ready to take up a Senate bill and move it if we get it back from the Senate. So we'll see what the Senate does.
What's going on with the discrimination bill, Senate Bill 43?
It's still on the calendar, and we're going to start working through Senate bills on the calendar again next week.
Is the Republican caucus in agreement on passing that?
Look, I don't know that the Republican caucus has been in 100% agreement on anything this year. But we'll continue to handle this the same way we've handled other difficult issues. We'll work through it as a caucus. We'll have a good, fair discussion on the floor, and we'll see what happens with it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.